I'm Katie, and this is the 20th episode of Ornamentations, which will be all about whips and finishes, both cross stitch and surface embroidery. We will get to those in just a minute, but before that, I have some really exciting news to share with you, which you may have heard already if you're following the hashtag on Instagram, Simple Harmony SAL, because the posy has been claimed and there is a first full finish of a Simple Harmony box. I am so excited to share with you that Jane Crumpler has fully finished her Simple Harmony box, which is absolutely beautiful. You can check out her full photos and description on her Instagram at Jane Crumpler, which I'll put in the description below. But Jane has graciously given me permission to share some of her photos with you here, and I will be inserting them. Her finish is absolutely stunning. I did check with her, and this is in fact her first glued finish. So congratulations, Jane. You absolutely knocked it out of the park. She did this relying on the tutorials, and I think hopes to do more embroidered boxes in future, which I was so thrilled to hear, because to me embroidered boxes really are just wonderful and addictive, and once you start it's really hard to want to stitch anything else. So I'm glad I'm not the only person who feels like that, but really just congratulations to Jane, who did an absolutely beautiful job and also personalized her box to her. So in addition to using the initials of family members on the stitch itself, as I did on my own, she also personalized it with elements on the back, adding a little bee to symbolize the fact that she is a beekeeper, which I thought was just a beautiful personal little detail. The Simple Harmony box can be made as personal as you like, especially with the interior. So Jane is also going to stitch some little things to put in her own interior and personalize it further. But you can also personalize what you glue into your interior. Mountain Crafts Studio just had this discussion on her Flosstube of what she's thinking of doing with the interior of her Simple Harmony box, which you can check out on her latest Flosstube. She also covers some of the things that she's thinking of stitching and buying to put in her Simple Harmony box, which is another great way to personalize it, because as I've mentioned previously, historic caskets and embroidered boxes were often used both as sewing boxes and repositories of tiny personal treasures by the girls who made them. Which brings me to the remaining prizes left to be claimed. So the posy is already on its way to Jane, who earned it with a truly spectacular finish for a first glued finish. This is just incredible, and I am so excited and pleased to see it. But the second prize is still up for grabs, as is the third. The second, as we've covered previously, is this wonderful, wonderful thread palette of Soie Gobelins donated by Access Commodities. And then the third prize, as we've just been discussing, is a set of antique needlework tools and a mother of pearl thread winder, which I have shown you previously, for you to put in your own Simple Harmony box as a historically accurate addition to your stitch. So I'm hoping that we will be seeing more finishes very soon. Please post your progress photos to the hashtag Simple Harmony SAL, because I really do love seeing your progress, and feel free to email me with any questions. It seems that the tutorials are comprehensive and can get you all the way through. Jane's finish certainly proves that. So if you are feeling worried, just go back and watch them again. But with that, we will get on to my own stitching for this week. So Mother's Day was this weekend. I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day with your family if you were celebrating. And for my own mother, I stitched Brenda Gervais, The Rabbit in the Rose, which came out at Market this year. So when I saw this, I thought it was a lovely design, but I also thought it was just the kind of thing that my mom would just love and go ape for, which turned out to be a little too true. This is my finished stitch, which she graciously let me borrow back after I gave it to her this weekend, so I could show it to you on my Flosstube, which I finished just as an unembellished pillow backed with Duchess silk satin, because I thought that really let the design sing. And this is my own silk colorway adaptation, which I'll be showing you in just a second. And this is actually my brighter colorway. So I looked at the original and I picked just my favorite red, pink, and blue out of the Cabinet of Curiosities historic color family that were of approximately the same value. But they did actually turn out bright on the ground I chose, which was Legacy Linen Fuller's Teasel, in a beautiful way, but one that I found actually a little surprising. I had just used this exact blue on the linen one shade lighter, Brewer's Malt, and it hadn't looked nearly as vibrant to me. That's an interaction with the ground. It was interesting. So as I was stitching this, I loved the pattern so much, I decided to do it again for myself, but so that I wouldn't be doing the exact same stitch twice, I decided to adjust the colorway a little bit to make it a little paler and a little more in line with the original. So the pinks are a little more terracotta, the blue's a little paler, and the green is a little darker. So there are only 4 colors that are different between these two stitches, as well as the ground, which is also one shade lighter. So what's your preference? Brighter or paler? And another question, since I did receive some questions about this on Instagram when I posted it this weekend, would you be interested in a kit of the Rabbit and the Rose, which would be thread, finishing materials, and ground fabric? And if so, brighter or paler on the stitch? I'll show you the threads and that will be a little more accurate. I'm struggling with the light is pretty variable in here right now. So most of the colors between the two are exactly the same. The only ones that are different are these 4 at the top, which are from the brighter colors. And then, as you can see, the blue, red, pink, and green on the bottom. That's the paler colorway. That's a more accurate representation, I think. I'm struggling with shadows here because it's quite overcast today. So the colors are actually very, very similar, but the ground is part of what makes them look so different. And I think this is most evident in the blue. The pinks do actually look quite different to me in person, but I'm not sure it's showing up so well on camera today given the light. So this is my stitch of the Rabbit and Rose for myself, which I will hopefully have fully finished next time. I'm thinking of experimenting with a beaded looped edging on this one, although truly it may not need anything at all. And then this is the brighter version for my mother. Another thing about this is the tail, which is cut turkey stitch in Soie Ovale, which is an untwisted filament silk that we'll be covering in the specialty thread tutorial. There's not much to cut turkey stitch. It's a loop anchored by a straight stitch at the bottom. I will post a link to Mary Corbett's tutorial in the description, which is how I myself learned to do it, although the Ovale that I used might not be the best choice if you are new to filament silks or new to cut turkey stitch. Soie Ovale is a wonderful, wonderful thread that we'll be talking about more in a minute, but it's a thread with a learning curve and it can be very challenging at first. It tends to snag until you just kind of get a feel for how it handles. I know that the first few times I tried to use this thread, I threw straight up temper tantrum. There were spools thrown across the room. There may even have been tears. Wasn't one of my best moments, but eventually you just kind of, something clicks. You figure out how the thread works and you never notice it again. But although it makes for absolutely incomparable cut turkey stitch, you can do the same stitch with any thread you like and you will get a very similar effect on the tail, although maybe not quite this fabulously fluffy. That would be specific to Soie Ovale. And then I used it again in my most recent Christmas finish. Again, not FFO'd, because there are some points about this that I want to examine in the specialty thread tutorial, which I'm ashamed to say I haven't filmed yet. I will very soon. And this is my stitch of Brenda Gervais' Candy Cane Wishes. And this is mine. So I haven't put the berries on yet. I think the design does really need those extra little pops of red. I'll be using 2mm crystal rounds for my berries, and those will be put on after I have backed the stitch and gotten it ready for finishing. I'd like to film this for the specialty thread tutorial before that, because you can get a better view of the thread relative to the weave before it's been backed. So this is Candy Cane Wishes with the stitching done, but not the embellishment and not the finishing. And then these are my threads, which I will list in the description below for the branchy, leafy things. I don't even know what that's called. I used untwisted filament silk, Soie Ovale, used with the laying tool, just worked in straight stitches. And this is why you bother learning to use Soie Ovale. It's because of that absolutely incomparable shine, which shows to wonderful, wonderful effect here, I think. And it just makes the leafy things look fuller and I think just more like a design element than it did on the model stitch with just a single strand of floss. So that's one change I made. I also left out the birds because I don't know, I didn't think that they were necessary. I liked just the snowman and his kind of snowflakey leafy background to be accented with lots of red beet berries. And then I also changed out the leaves on this. So in the chart, these are meant to be holly leaves, but when I actually went to stitch them, I found them a little awkward. So when you're using just squares to make a more detailed element at this scale, it can be difficult, and I didn't feel like the holly was really doing it for me. However, there was an easy fix here, and that was to take another leaf from her springtime version of this pattern, which is Spring Serenade. I believe Brenda showed this on her Brenda Gervais small chart parade a few weeks ago. So these are the leaves as charted from Spring Serenade, which I just dropped right in to Candy Cane Wishes in colorway from Candy Cane Wishes, and they fit perfectly, and I think they work really well, especially because you're getting, I don't know, it's It's not something you would have to do, but since that particular design quirk was bothering me, this was a really easy solution. The charts are incredibly similar, the sizing's the same, so you can just take elements and put one into the other without any recharting or anything. So this is my stitch of Candy Cane Wishes. I hope to be showing you a full finish soon. I have an interesting idea about the edging on this ornament. I'll have to order some supplies. So I'm not sure when we'll see this again, but and yes, I did show you my threads, which as usual are Soie Gobelins, Soie Ovales we discussed, and then Accentuate, focus please, camera, used for the snowflakes, and then all the red on the snowman, his gloves, his scarf, and the little detailing on his hat. It is very sparkly in person, although I don't think it's really registering on the camera. So I'm excited to finish that. I think it's going to be a really cute little ornament, especially once you get those little pops of red on there, which are just going to make the design come alive. I'm really excited to try out this finishing idea, which may not work. My ideas don't always work, but I'm definitely excited to try it out. So those are my cross stitch finishes for you today, and now I will be updating you on my progress on my ongoing casket panel, which I showed you in the last episode. So when I showed this to you last time, this was in its very earliest stages. It was just plain fabric with the exception of the frieze, and I have been working like a complete maniac since. Progress is really going to slow down after this because I can't keep up with space, but this is where I am today. So our figure of the lusty lady is in. Our very surprised Brenda Mart is here with her little shocked face. She's got her beautiful, I don't know how much you're seeing the light reflection here, but her coverlet is just so gloriously shiny and fabulous. And then the bed hangings are in. Done the bed and the column, which is padded out and then worked in satin stitch. And then I've worked the floor. This is a patterned needle lace stitch that I learned from Cabinet of Curiosities Part 2 stump work. So as I showed you previously, the needle lace curtains and the split stitch coverlet were worked separately and then applied to the ground fabric. Oops, so I'm knocking stuff over even off camera. And then these are the threads, all Soie de Paris. The pinky reds on this side are for the coverlet, and then the dark reds are the needle lace for the drapes. I love the coverlet. I did pad it out with what's supposed to be the shape of Brenda Mart's body under the bed, but I'm not sure it really comes across. The Soie de Paris worked in this way throws off so much light that it tends to obscure small details like that. So you can see here the panel that some of the elements are lightly raised, although some of the stitching is in fact flat. And then this is my design. Again, as I showed you last episode, so pretty much all that's missing at this point are the three soldiers in the background storming in when their lady of the castle raises the alarm. I do have some color decisions to make on this, which is why I think my progress from this point will be slower. I knew what I was doing up until this point, and I had all of the needle lace and the coverlet already worked when I started, which allowed me to make very rapid progress on this. And then again, as discussed last time, this is styled after two historic caskets depicting the story of Joseph. So one from the Met And this is on the back of the book, English Embroidery from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Twixt Art and Nature, which I will link in the description. This is a better picture of the panel. And then the same scene is also seen in a slightly different design on the Christie's casket, again linked in the last episode, but linked in the description again today as well. That was the primary inspiration for my own casket. However, the composition of this panel was much more influenced by the Met one. I loved that elaborate bed cover, the drapes, and the form of the bed. So this depiction is a little simpler, a little more crudely worked, and I just loved all the undulating curves of this. And the shading is really very bold, and it's that banded shading that's very characteristic of 17th century English embroidery. But in this setting, I think it works, and I'm pretty pleased with the results. So there's Our Lady, and here is our very, very surprised Brenda. I had a lot of fun with her. So she's shocked when the lady of the night, when the lady of the castle, having mistaken for her a handsome young knight, comes for a midnight assignation and instead finds a very surprised, very angry, very female Brenda instead. She doesn't really get the result that she was looking for. So once I get the soldiers in, this panel will be finished. I'll get it mounted on my casket, and we'll move on to showing you the next phase in the casket journey, which will be the back of the panel. Oh my gosh, and I forgot. Pause 1 second, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry, not quite as prepared as I thought for today, apparently. So in terms of showing you my casket journey of how my stumpwork casket is coming together, last time I showed you the lid still mounted on the slate frame, ready for gluing. And today I have it actually mounted on the lid of the box, ready to be trimmed out. So I'm gonna do that once all the panels have been glued and applied to the box while the trim goes on at once, so that it can tarnish at the same rate. Essentially, it is real silver and it will color over time, so I want it all to be the same color. So this is the lid glued and attached to the box, and then hopefully before too much longer I will have a finish on the current casket panel and be able to get that on the box as well, so I can show you the next stage in my casket journey. Although I'm not sure how much embroidery on my casket I'm gonna get done for the rest of the month. It's gonna be a pretty busy time. So I actually think, oh, no, one more thing about this panel, which I keep forgetting to mention, which is that given the way that this whole stumpwork section came together rapidly, I thought it was a little unfair, since I promised to show you how a stumpwork panel came together. What I've been doing is taking photos either at the end of every day or at each step in the process. And then once this panel is finished, I'm going to clip them all together into a little stop motion video, so you can see the actual evolution of how each element came together, the order in which they were worked. So, you know, the understitching, the flat, long and short stitching of the curtains was done before this was applied, which was then done before Malicasta, our amorous lady, was stitched, because she goes over both of those elements, but then of course under the bed, and then the floor goes under the coverlet. So these two things had to be stitched before any of this could be worked. And then the bed had to be applied before the bottom drape, and then the bottom drape had to be applied before the bed post could go on because that's worked over. So stump work essentially is just layers. If you think about a sampler, you build it up motif by motif, bit by bit, and that's exactly the same thing you do with a stump work panel, except instead of working in different parts of your ground fabric and just bird, house, ground, people, verse, border, you're working in layers on top of each other. Well, not always on top of, overlapping each other piece by piece by piece. So the process is very similar, although the stitches are the same. I think most large size stitching projects are really the same in that way, but that's a discussion for another day. So for next time, I hope to have some finishes for you, and then we are also going to have some whips. I have started Seasons of the Heart, and then I also will have, what was I gonna have? Oh, some tiny counted finishes from years past that I haven't shown you yet. I recently rediscovered them, and I hope you'll enjoy them as much as I did, because when I saw them again, they brought quite a smile to my face. Somehow I have managed to forget that I stitched this, and it was such a joy to rediscover it again and to get it back out. And then I think that's everything that I have for today. Let me know what you think about a possible kit of the Rabbit and the Rose and which colorway you prefer in the comments. And then I will see you again in 2 weeks for the next episode of Ornamentations. Until then, happy stitching.